and here to talk about some cool things and have a nice conversation, hopefully, about some of the great things he's doing within the Web3 space. My name's Kyle Keem. I'm the CTO of Bondex, and I just wanted to introduce Matt and get it rolling. Matt, tell us a bit about Kudo's Ventures.
Yeah, hi Kyle. Thanks. So Kudos really has come from, we are seeing huge growth obviously in the blockchain space, but there's still a disparity between blockchain and cloud computing. And that's really, I think, where we're going to see the innovation over the next few years, where we can take the computing power of blockchain or computing power of cloud and apply that to blockchain. And that's really where we're going to see the extension of it. Because at the moment, if you look at most blockchains, they're designed based on transaction, not computation. So you kind of have to be very limited in what you do functionally. So we've built a network that scales on the available computing capacity in the world. So we've got over 700,000 users, service providers all around the world providing computing capacity for that blockchain. And then that means that we can scale computing capacity for our own blockchain, which is we're also a layer one, but also all other blockchains. So if you think of how, I guess, IPFS or Filecoin have kind of become the default storage platform for most blockchains, we're essentially doing the same in the computing space. So we can be the computing network and extend the computing capability of pretty much all blockchains.
That's very cool. What are the benefits of using Web3, and how does Web3 apply to Kudo's Ventures?
Yeah, I think if you kind of look at where we are from an evolution perspective, we're kind of 12, 13 years into Web3. And if you kind of look where we were in the internet 12, 13 years, it was still in a relatively immature state. I think you're starting to see a lot of innovation. You're starting to see kind of the big players come out of it, but there's still a huge amount that had over the next 10, 15 years. And we're kind of in that same position now in Web3, which is, for a lot of us, what's so exciting about it in the first place. The benefits, I think what we see now are going to expand a lot more going forward. But one of them is kind of the openness of Web3. If you think about traditional computing, when you build applications, a lot of that's closed and they're all different communications from different platforms and everyone's building applications independently. Whereas with Web3, pretty much everything is open. There's standards of communication between everything. And that's why you're seeing levels of and speed of innovation much faster than you've seen in the traditional internet space. Someone may come up with a new standard such as NFTs, and you find, a month later it's been adopted by 50 projects and, a number of blockchains, and then it expands from there. So I think one of them is speed of innovation, and that's what will come up with, a lot of the new ideas that I think really going to have as big an impact as the internet did back in the day when that started to take off. Also, really from a global market perspective, because kind of Web3 levels the playing fields to an extent. If you're building on Web3 and you are talented and you've got skills in Web3 and you're building those applications, you've really got access to the global market, and that market share is continuing to expand. And there's countries such as Nigeria where over 30% of the population holds cryptocurrency. In the UK, over 50% of the UK population as Gen Zs now hold crypto. So we're seeing really fast adoption in this space. So I think that is just a very large market that you've got access to. And there's a lot of new players coming into the market very quickly. So Web3 probably enables you to get funding a bit better. I think if you've got the ability to come up with a good idea and you've got the team and the skills, then you're able to build those applications. Then you can get funding much faster than you could in the traditional space. So I think it's a real benefit. And then you really just going down to the technologies. If you're talking about NFTs and DeFi and these other platforms, NFTs I think are going to be historically, or if you look at a little bit while ago, they're looked at as characters and the artwork that's worth whatever, a few $1 million. But that's just the edge, and that's kind of the first usage of it. really it's the ability of what it's going to enable us to do. The fact that you can digitize and tokenize the ownership of anything, and that can be land, that can be property, it can be contracts. Like in the UK, it's now legal. Like a smart contract is considered the same legal framework as a traditional contract. So it means that we can now become more efficient in the things where there was previously admin people had to be involved. Actually, you can script the entire thing now, and you can skip all these steps. And because they're standards, you can link APIs and connections into your finance system, or you can link into providing, a DeFi loan. So you can literally automate the entire process. Where you look at kind of this legal system's been around hundreds of years. It's the first time that we're kind of regulatory wise, but also technically being able to automate these things much faster. So again, it's not just, I think, speed up of development. It's actually speed up of processes that we're seeing in day-to-day life. That's going to be really interesting as well.
It's a fantastic segue into my next question. As things are, some of the most significant issues that we're working on resolving surrounding Web3, or the way I say we as a whole, as an aggregate society, are solving with Web3, it seemed to be around privacy, self-sovereignty, provenance, economics. There's a lot of different aspects that this currently works towards. It's broad. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's extremely broad, which means, as you mentioned, the speed at which it's moving, it's hard for here at Bondex, we're trying to solve for the difficulty of keeping abreast of everything at a professional level. We start breaking down barriers within the talent workspace. Breaking norms with the speed things are moving. Everybody can toss Web3 up, but how many Web3 professionals are actually out there? What qualifies and constitutes a Web3 professional? These are things that we're trying to tackle here at Bondex. And to that end, the question I'd like to ask is, what does Web3 allow talent professionals to do in your perspective?
I guess talent professionals in the Web3 space fall across pretty much all areas they do in traditional businesses, which can be across marketing, content creation, it's across developers, it's design, it's pretty much everything that you kind of have in a traditional business. But they're newer skill sets, I think, that you apply to it, but they're similar knowledge areas. So I think since COVID kind of kicked in and a lot more people are now remote workers, be it part-time or full-time, I think there is a much wider audience of employers around the world that are looking, especially for talent in Web3. Now, if you look at any new technology that's adopted fast, it usually means the demand for talent outstrips the talent that exists in the market, because universities are still training people up, courses are still being made, and you're kind of seeing this fast acceleration, and you're seeing that in people's salaries and what they earn as well. You can, in the blockchain space and Web3 space, you can demand a premium, and if you're good at your role, there is not unlimited roles out there, but there's a huge number of roles, which is probably a better pool than you would have in many other industries. So I think obviously, that we go through that cycle in the crypto market, and the kind of 4-year cycle where you have your highs and lows. But overall, it's a pretty active place to be talent in that space. So I think certainly Web3 enables you more to be a remote worker or a digital nomad, even more than a traditional business. I would say of most Web3 businesses I know, most of them are made up of just a pool of international people in different time zones as well. So I think even less so that you're having to be in the same time zone, which was probably more standard, even as remote workers. I think as long as everybody is kind of working together, to the same goals, and you're tracking it the traditional project ways that you would, and everyone's working on the same tasks, actually that the number of people are dispersed a lot more. So it probably means if you're located in countries where there may not have been so many startups, and may not have been so much demand for that type of employment. You go to the international market and the demand is still there. So I think, that is certainly much newer than, what we previously built a data center and cloud company. And, we come from this cloud space, but it was nothing like this. The playing field wasn't so level. You would still go for more local talent or time zone talent. And I think in Web3 space, you don't even look at it like that. You look for the skills, not necessarily for the geography.
Yes, and it's extremely exciting being able to face down the Web3 challenges that are cropping up at a global scale instead of simply localizing it within a smaller area or a single country as a whole. I absolutely agree. The To that end, to dovetail off of that question, now we just covered what Web3 allows talent professionals to do. Do you see any ways Web3 will make talent management easier at this scale?
I think one of them is identity. At the moment, your identity is usually held with a single platform, or be that it's where your CVs are, or where you've listed where you've worked beforehand, or the scores that you've got on Upwork or Freelancer, one of these other platforms. But they're all independent. And as now you're starting to see more self-sovereign identity, it means that you can carry your identity around. And if we can get more and more platforms in Web3 kind of standardizing on that, and I think we're still in the really early stages here, that there's still only a few platforms that, rather than using on FIDO or something, you can actually bring your identity with you. And that's even for the exchanges. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that over the next few years, where there's going to be a handful of providers, like there are kind of a handful of most used KYC providers, probably 5 to 10 that hold most of the market. I think you're going to see the same in self-sovereign identity. And if that becomes the standard, and then on the blockchain, you can tie to your identity the scores that you get working and providing services in all these different, platforms, scores for different jobs, anything relating to your history, basically in the workspace, you'll be able to carry that around with you. And I think that's going to make it much better. The people that are obviously doing well in that space and they've got a good history, they're going to find it even easier, to be able to do that. And it would also mean that, let's say, a new talent platform comes up, they can just have all of the history that everybody comes on with that. And then it's actually about finding the employers rather than having to create the historical information, which is part of the challenge anyway. I mean, as you've got a talent platform, you've got to create that audience. Whereas if people can carry around their history, then that makes that much easier to do as well. So I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest impacts in talent management. And from an HR perspective, at the moment, recruitment is still quite challenging if you're recruiting people from 20, 30, 40 countries. But there are more and more platforms which you've got your historical platforms that let you pay out to people's bank accounts, like Skrill in multiple currencies, or there's other ones that will do the HR side, but also they're very expensive, the HR platforms at the moment that do that. I think as we get more of this going directly on chain, typically when you see something go on chain, the costs reduce massively because everything's automated. So if we can get the same in the HR space and actually have that as management of international payments, and I'm seeing this, there are a few, I'm trying to remember names, but there's a few applications out there at the moment that will pay internationally. If you want to pay their salaries in Bitcoin or the native token of your blockchain, for example, they will automate all of that and do it with your national insurance or PAYE or whatever the equivalent is in that country. I think over the next couple of years, you'll probably see them get into maturity, which makes it even easier for recruiters to be able to have international teams around the world. So we're probably seeing over the next, 2-3 years, most of the barriers in the HR side to managing these Web3 individuals in your teams, being taken down, and actually the whole thing's automated, as most things are in Web3.
It's exciting. There's so much possibility within the space. It's interesting seeing it grow and form in various places. And I mentioned this before we hopped onto the stream. It's exciting seeing Kudo Ventures being positioned as a foundational, uh, sort of an infrastructure of sorts. We talked about uh, infrastructure started out as hardware, then it wrapped around a cloud. Now we're coming into like a community based infrastructure as a whole, and being able to leverage all that computing capacity that doesn't currently exist is it's exciting. It's interesting stuff, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we take off?
I think just on that, I think you are seeing a lot more ways for people to earn. It doesn't just have to be their time, like you just said there. You know, it can be people providing their computing resources.
Mm-hmm.
It can be people selling their identity and making that available for advertising, as you're seeing with Brave and other browsers. I think you're seeing more and more platforms where it doesn't just have to be your time that's valuable and you make money off. It's your data that's valuable. It's your hardware. It's your mobile phone. It's the other information. Whereas previously, all that money, in the cloud space, the money just goes to the hyperscalers. In the advertising space, the money just goes to Google and these other providers. Whereas now you can start to earn from everything that you own as well. So I think that's going to be a big one, is as well as people looking at how do they make money from their time, they could look at actually how could I buy a PC and stick it in or upgrade my PC and I earn more money. Could I actually just share my information to advertisers and I earn more money? I think there's going to be much more ways that people can earn their funds and make a living actually as well. And especially from a development application. I think one of the things we didn't say is that I think it's now much easier for people to build their own applications, to make their own software, to be able to generate revenue than they could beforehand. Normally you'd have to build something, make it commercial, advertise it on an app store. Actually, now you can get grants from blockchains, and we provide grants and many other blockchains do to build applications and good ideas so you can give it a go and try it. And there's all the training out there that you need to really learn how to do this over a few months and then get into the space. So if people are interested in the blockchain space and they're not in it, just learn and play and apply for some grants and give it a go and just get into the space, because we're just at the start of this now. It's the next 5-10 years that we're really going to see the big growth as well.
Very cool. It's extremely exciting. Well, Matt, I wanted to thank you for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you. We here at Bondex are looking forward to working with Cudo Ventures more, and I look forward to talking with you again sometime soon.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Good to speak to you.
Have a good day.